All right, so moving on to casting news. We actually have a lot of casting news to cover because we've been off the air for several weeks, I guess, because of the weather and everything. So there's been a lot that's come out. We're going to probably rapid fire a lot of this casting news. We're going to cover Marvel and DC. But the first thing that we want to mention, and probably the biggest thing for Marvel, is that they had a poster come out for Avengers 2 Age of Ultron. And while there was a lot of stuff we expected to see, Cap, Hulk, Thor, those characters, we actually got some names on the credits at the bottom of the poster that maybe we weren't really expecting. The first one worth mentioning is Falcon, or Anthony Mackie. He was listed on the bottom of the poster, and so far as we know, he wasn't even going to be part of this movie. We weren't supposed to see him again until Captain America Civil War. I mean, are you as surprised as I was to see that name on there?
Well, yeah, I mean, we talked about him previously and decided that he probably wasn't going to be in Avengers 2. I'm wondering what his role is going to be now that we know he's there.
How big is it going to be?
Yeah.
I mean, he's not on the poster in image or anything like that, so you have to assume it's going to be a somewhat smaller role or side role, but yeah, very interesting that he's actually on the poster. The next name here is Skarsgård, Stellan Skarsgård, the guy who played Dr. Selvig in the first Thor movie, Thor 2: The Dark World. He was in Avengers. He's a guy who probably had no idea when he signed up for Thor that he was going to be in all of these Marvel films. And I don't think he's signed to one of those multi-picture contracts like Chris Hemsworth or Sam Jackson are. So he's probably been really happy to have his phone keep ringing and them asking him to come back. So he's going to be in the movie in some
Wasn't he
respect.
just a puppet in the first movie, too?
Well, he was a puppet in Avengers, yeah. But he was kind of the science guy, I guess, in the Thor movie. So it'd be interesting to see if
For some reason in my brain, he had died. I guess he hasn't.
I think the last time we saw him, he was, well, in Thor 2, I guess he kind of lost his mind a little bit and was running around naked at Stonehenge, and I think that's kind of the last time that we saw him.
Good.
So it'll be interesting to see what he's up to. The next name on the poster was Haley Atwell. Now, I couldn't find any proof of this. I thought we already knew Haley Atwell was going to be in the movie. In fact, the trailer for the first trailer that was released showed Stephen Rogers, Captain America,
Yeah, you
walking
can put
around.
up the image where basically you see
I'll put up the image
back
here.
of her
Well, you see him walking around what appears to be a USO show. So I guess it wasn't confirmed, but now her name's on the bottom of the poster, and a lot of people are treating that like it's new. So I'm going to assume that that's official now.
Well, even with the frame you're talking about where you see her, it's really like half a second. So I mean, maybe they didn't expect that to be a giveaway. Or,
I guess. Yeah, maybe not. So obviously we're going to be looking at flashbacks then for this movie. Now, curious.
Don't know that for sure. But
Don't know that for sure. Yeah, it could be older Peggy, in Avengers 2. But assuming it is a flashback, it almost makes you wonder how old the Ultron program is. And if it flashes back to that far, maybe Howard Stark has something to do with it. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how all that plays out.
We haven't seen Dominic Cooper confirmed yet, have we?
We have not, no.
So Howard Stark would probably not be in the movie, but there still could be references.
There could be, yeah. So also we had Idris Elba listed on the poster. Now, if you guys have been following social media, you know that Idris Elba is done with Marvel, basically. He got locked into a contract. He wasn't happy with how much screen time or how much he got to do in Thor 2. He just played Nelson Mandela, and he thinks it's one of the best roles of his career. So he had already spoiled a while back that he was somehow involved in this movie, but now we've got the proof on the poster. His name's right there. So expect Heimdall to be making an appearance in this movie.
In what capacity could Heimdall be in Avengers?
I don't know. I mean, he's the portal to Asgard, right? I mean, he doesn't typically come down to Earth and slug it out with guys, so it almost seems like there'd have to be a scene.
Thor and Asgard.
Thor and Asgard. Maybe it's a scene that potentially sets up Thor Ragnarok, where maybe Thor's returning to Asgard, and Heimdall says, a lot's been going on since you've been gone this whole movie, and that kind of leads into maybe Ragnarok.
And see, this is the thing, I mean, not to get too far off topic, but we've had so much speculation about what the Age of Ultron post-credits is going to be.
Yes.
And now that you've got Spider-Man in the mix too, that's a possibility, and we've got another announcement coming up here to discuss with that. Actually, let's go ahead and move on to that, and then I'll get back.
Okay. So around the same time that we got this poster out, Robert Downey Jr., I think it was the next day, put out a poster of just Iron Man, like a one sheet of just Iron Man, an official poster for the movie, and said, you guys have been great. Here's this poster. Also, a surprise is coming in 8 days, which is going to be Thursday of next week or this coming week, depending on when you watch it. I don't have the exact day of the week, but basically it's going to be very soon. We don't know what this announcement is, but it's interesting that Robert Downey Jr. made this announcement. You would think it would have to be something potentially Iron Man related, and if it's not Iron Man related, maybe it has something to do with another name that we saw on that poster. The final name I wanted to mention was that Danny Elfman was listed on the poster. Now, obviously, Danny Elfman's not an actor. He's a composer. He's known for doing the music for Edward Scissorhands, the music for Spider-Man, the music for Batman, the music for the Ang Lee Hulk film. He's been a composer for a long time. Typically tends to work with Tim Burton. If you ever see a Tim Burton movie, he's the guy doing the music. But what we do know about him is that Brian Taylor was supposed to be doing the music for the Avengers movie. He was the one who was hired on. He's the one who's supposed to be doing it. unless Brian Taylor was having trouble with the writing of the film, music-wise, and they had to bring Elfman in to help finish up the music, it really makes you wonder why his name's on the poster. Unless we are getting a potential Spider-Man post-credits sequence that features the Sam Raimi Spider-Man music, whether it be new music or old music. Maybe we're going to get new Danny Elfman Spider-Man music, but wouldn't it be really cool if we get the Spider-Man theme from the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy and then we see Spider-Man in a post-credit sequence? And wouldn't it be even cooler if this announcement that Robert Downey Jr. is alluding to is actually going to be some sort of teaser image or possibly even teaser clip of Captain America and Iron Man and Spider-Man all together for the first time? I mean, I think that would just set fanboys and nerds on fire. So it's going to be really exciting to see what this is. If we have a Project Geek Week next week, we'll see. Our track record hasn't been too great. But if we have a Project Geek Week next week, you can bet that we'll be discussing whatever this announcement is that he put out. And
so to get back to the previous issue, it's possible. So take Spider-Man out of the mix for a second.
Sure.
Pretend that announcement didn't happen. What would you have guessed the Age of Ultron post-credits was going to be?
Before Spider-Man, I would have guessed that it was something leading into Captain America Civil War.
Okay.
I would assume that the end of Avengers had Tony and Steve at odds, and maybe the post-credit sequence is them drawing the line in the sand and saying, that's it, we're going our separate ways, leading into Captain America Civil War.
Is Civil War going to be before Thor Ragnarok?
Yes.
Okay. So that would make more sense, although it doesn't necessarily have to make sense since we got Thanos in Avengers 1.
True.
And didn't see him for quite a while. But the Heimdall announcement was leading me to think that it's possible, like you were saying, there could be some post-credits set up to Thor Ragnarok. But now that you've got Spider-Man in the mix too, really you're thinking at least now of 3 different things that could be set up: Civil War, Thor Ragnarok, Spider-Man. I doubt there's going to be 3 post-credit sequences. So
what if there were?
Well, there could be.
What if it's Lord of the Rings, Return of the King style, and it's you got one denouement, then another, then another. I would think it would drive us crazy, right? Like all the stuff that we're getting, yeah.
People would certainly like it, to be sure. I do wonder. Well, firstly, with the Heimdall announcement, it's so recent that, he's probably been involved for a while, but
sure.
We've only learned it so recently, so publicly, that it seems a bit late to have him have a major part in the movie.
I would agree.
So a post-credits could be a good guess, but at the same time, it's like you can't. I mean, you've got Civil War coming up sooner. You got Spider-Man, which is bigger news. Thor Ragnarok would be, I don't know, it would feel kind of paltry by comparison.
It seems like that movie's been put on the back burner, based with everything else going on with Marvel, the way they've adjusted the release schedule. I think Thor Ragnarok now might not even come out until after Avengers Infinity War Part 1. I'm not even sure at this point. So, yeah, it seems like the least possible outcome is some sort of teaser for that movie.
So it may be more likely that they set something up during the movie for that. But then, and that's the thing, that with the new Spider-Man announcement, do they revise any existing post-credit sequence they already had, or do they do 2, like we said?
Yeah, do 2.
We'll have to see, I guess. But.
Or could we, let's say they've got all this content. Let's say they had a post-credit sequence plan. Still film it, and maybe Marvel will finally give us a one-shot again on a Blu-ray, so when you buy Avengers 2 on home video, you have that extra post-credit sequence that's really just a one-shot. That still gets you hyped up for what's going on. So it gives you a reason, too, to buy the movie at home. So lots of possibilities. Definitely. Is what that comes down to. Now, I do want to mention, the idea of Danny Elfman's score being used was not my own. If you listen or watch the Smoes Know podcast, they were the ones who kind of thought up the idea that Danny Elfman might be using the Spider-Man Sam Raimi music, and I certainly think that that's a good idea. So I have to give credit where credit's due, but I think that's phenomenal. If that's what they would do, it would actually make a lot of sense for why Danny Elfman would even be listed on the poster at all if they were referencing some of his music. So, moving on, we have a casting rumor for Ben Hardy in X-Men Apocalypse. Now, this one's still in rumor mode at the moment, but it seems highly likely that it's going to happen. The news came via The Wrap, which is a mostly reputable sort of entertainment news site. And they say that this guy, Ben Hardy, is being looked at by Bryan Singer. He's appeared in a soap opera called EastEnders. Now, I've never heard of this, but he was on it for 188 episodes, and I'm going to assume his tenure's done or he's on break or something. But if you look at an image of Ben Hardy, and I'm putting one up on the screen right now, he is a white, blonde-haired gentleman. So when you think about the cast that we've got in X-Men Apocalypse, we know Jean's going to be there. We know Cyclops is going to be there. Beast, of course, is going to be there. He's been in the last 2 prequel films that have come out. It seems very likely that he's either going to be Iceman, which doesn't make a lot of sense if the Days of Future Past movie tells us that Iceman's Sean Ashmore is the proper Iceman. He would only still be an infant at this point when X-Men Apocalypse is happening, because it takes place in the 1980s. So the other possible option, and again, even still falls in line with X-Men The Last Stand, even though we want to forget that movie, is that Angel would have been a teenager around the time that X-Men Apocalypse is happening. And if Angel is in the movie, that is huge because Apocalypse is also in the movie. And there's no way they're going to have Angel in an Apocalypse movie without having Archangel make an appearance.
Is Bryan Singer directing X-Men Apocalypse?
He is.
Okay, so is you were saying that having Angel in the movie would be consistent with First Class?
With First Class?
I thought that's what you said.
With The Last Stand.
Last Stand. Oh,
because
okay.
Angel appears in The Last Stand.
Well, because I was going to say
yeah.
First Class they had someone else named Angel that wasn't Angel.
Oh, I see what you're saying. No.
And I'm curious, in Days of Future Past, we had Bryan Singer, I'm assuming this was his decision, Bryan Singer effectively killing off Angel, Azazel, a bunch of people.
Yes.
Is it possible that that was in an attempt to set up the proper Angel in X-Men Apocalypse?
Oh, that could be.
Because
yeah.
I think I remember you saying this previously, that those characters in Days of Future Past weren't intended to all just die. Like
no, right. If Matthew Vaughn had continued on as director, I think we would have gotten Azazel and Angel and Banshee and all those guys coming back. But I think it's because Bryan Singer was involved. He kind of wanted to get back to the mutants that he had been comfortable and familiar working with.
And if he knew at that point that the Apocalypse plotline was on the horizon, maybe he had the thought...
In fact, he did.
Let's get rid of Angel.
As X-Men, and I remember because I follow him on Twitter, as filming of X-Men Days of Future Past had more or less just begun. He had gotten all the original cast members back together, and it was the month or so that he had those guys together that he was filming that he actually tweeted out, hashtag X-Men, hashtag Apocalypse, and that's all he said, or something to that effect. I just remember like losing my mind when I saw it. And so, yeah, I think he very much knew where he was going to take the next movie if he was actually the one directing it. So, yes, it seems like he was setting the way for Angel to show up, the Warren Worthington, the third Angel, and not have any sort of brand confusion or audience confusion with the Lenny Kravitz's daughter, Zoe Kravitz, I believe her name is, and her version of Angel. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, definitely, it would make a lot of sense.
That would make a lot of sense. And the only downside there is that it almost feels like having Angel introduced in the same movie that he
turns into Archangel. Yeah, you kind of run into the Star
fast.
Trek Into Darkness problem.
Yeah.
Where it's like, let's introduce this guy and then turn him into a great enemy and then fix it all by the end.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, hopefully they don't fix it all by the end. I guess they would have to if they're going to beat Apocalypse, though.
We don't know that they're going to beat Apocalypse.
It's true.
For all we know, again, I don't think there's anything even rumor about this right now, but what if X-Men Apocalypse ends in a cliffhanger and Angel has now been converted into Archangel? And now the X-Men are really sad. You almost get a Return of the Jedi. No, Empire Strikes Back type deal.
Have they announced... I know Marvel has announced Phase 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever they're on now. Has Fox announced what's coming next for X-Men?
All we know so far is that next year we're getting Deadpool in February, Apocalypse in May, and Gambit in September, October. I forget the month. So
we don't know what their plan is for the next X-Men.
Right, and I would say that they probably don't have everything as carefully planned out as Marvel does, just because Bryan Singer hasn't been back in house as long, right?
They don't
have Kevin Feige, yeah. But I would say if anybody at Fox is serving as the Kevin Feige figure currently, it's probably Bryan Singer, or at the very least Lauren Schuler Donner, who's been a producer on all of these. But
I gotta think he's at least got a cookie cutter of what he wants the next movie to be like.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I think so too.
And if it involves Angel, then awesome.
Yeah.
And I suppose they could try to gauge the response to Apocalypse in the upcoming movie and see, would people want to see another movie with him? Although I think it might be cutting it a little close to wait until the movie comes out and then gauge based on that whether to do another Apocalypse movie. I mean, 20, 30 years ago you may have been able to pull that off, but now you've kind of got to have your game plan all
exactly
set up.
Right. I mean, part of the reason we have so many continuity errors with the X-Men franchise as a whole is because A, Bryan wasn't on it the whole time, and B, Fox was reacting to the success of the previous film, then deciding to move on with the next one.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, we'll see what comes of all of this, but I would say if this guy's going to be in the movie, and it seems like he will be, Angel is probably the most likely candidate. So
I would agree.
Moving onward, while we're talking about X-Men Apocalypse, Cody Smith-McPhee was cast as Nightcrawler. Now, this is official. Nightcrawler is going to be in the next X-Men movie. Cody Smith-McPhee is an actor who I think is 18 or right about that age. His previous works include The Road, Paranorman, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. I'm sorry to say I've seen none of those.
I haven't seen any of those either.
Okay, so I don't really know what to expect from his acting. But what's interesting is that the fact that he is 18 years old. If you measure out the years between X-Men First Class and X-Men Apocalypse, First Class takes place in the 1963, I think was the date they landed on. And then you have X-Men Apocalypse taking place, I think, in the early 80s again. Cody Smith-McPhee is the perfect age for somebody who could have potentially been conceived post X-Men First Class between Mystique and Azazel.
This is true. The only question I have there, it's been, I guess, not that long, maybe a year or two since I saw First Class now, but I don't remember there being any romance at all between Mystique and Azazel.
You're correct. There wasn't in the movie, but at the end of the movie, Magneto stands with his new Brotherhood, and Azazel and Mystique are both members. Mm-hmm. So it can be inferred, if Nightcrawler's in X-Men Apocalypse, that at some point between First Class and Apocalypse, Mystique and Azazel had a child. I mean,
it's true.
The opportunity is right there in front of them. It's comic book canon that they actually had a child. I would be very, very surprised if they don't acknowledge the fact that Azazel is, or at least hint at the fact that Azazel is the father of Nightcrawler.
It's going to be an interesting situation. I don't know how they'll handle that with Azazel being dead in canon. Maybe they'll have flashbacks or something. Or...
That would be interesting. Mm-hmm. Now, one of the reasons we didn't get Azazel in X-Men Days of Future Past is because the guy who plays Azazel famously always does movies with Matthew Vaughn. And when Matthew Vaughn left the project, I think that more or less he could have stayed on for Singer, but I think he didn't want to be involved because Singer wasn't involved as well. So it'd be interesting to see if they got him for flashbacks. I guess is all I have to say about that. We might just get photographs of him like we did in Days of Future Past, but I don't know how we're going to reflect on that.
Do you think they wanted to do some Nightcrawler setup in Days of Future Past, but couldn't because they didn't have Azazel?
I don't know.
Well, like you were saying, if Matthew Vaughn had stayed on, he probably would have still been there.
Oh yes, I totally think he would have been.
So he had a role in the movie.
Oh yes, before Matthew Vaughn left, as far as I understand it, all those guys were returning. We probably were going to see a romance because they were both Brotherhood members. We probably would have seen a romance if I had to guess between Azazel and Mystique because the parts were all in place. Yeah. There was no reason for it not to happen. So yeah, interesting to see where this goes. But I would say kind of get excited. We're probably going to get this will probably be the last movie with Jennifer Lawrence in the new X-Men films.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. They can't really go back and fill in that story because Jennifer Lawrence isn't going to be there anymore.
Right, so this would be the movie to do it. If they were finally going to acknowledge the Mystique Nightcrawler connection, this is the film to do it in. So that's going to be an interesting element, I think, and that may actually be her through line in the movie X-Men Apocalypse is Mystique discovering that she's a mother and how to deal with that.
And I was going to say it'd be strange to have Nightcrawler and Mystique in a movie and not acknowledge that connection, but didn't that happen in Last Stand?
Not Last Stand, X-Men, X2, X-Men United.
Ah, okay.
Yes, now you're right, they didn't acknowledge it at all, but Bryan Singer went out of his way to have that scene of Nightcrawler and Mystique talking to each other about feeling outcast, how they both felt outcasted, and how Nightcrawler was jealous of her because she could just change her form, but she didn't, and she said we didn't have to. He very purposely put that scene where mother and son were talking even though they didn't know how they were related to each other.
Right.
So, moving onward, Daniel Cudmore. Okay, so this needs a little bit of setup here. There was a tweet that went out, 2 weeks ago now, where it was announced that Angel Dust, a Morlock, was going to be in Deadpool, the movie, and that Colossus was also going to be returning. Now, at that time, we got a casting announcement for Angel Dust, and we'll get to that in a moment. But the offhanded remark about Colossus returning had everyone off guard, and we're like, wait, what? Colossus is going to be in it? People started tweeting Daniel Cudmore and saying, hey, congratulations, you're going to be in the Deadpool movie. We're excited to see you again. He's like, hey, thanks, guys, for the support. I don't know anything about this. And within about 48 hours, he finally came out on his Twitter and said, I will not be returning for the Deadpool movie. Now, my initial thought had been, and one of the big mysteries behind Fox's plan with the X-Men franchise right now is, when was Deadpool going to take place? Was it going to be set in the 1980s because that's when Apocalypse is going to be set in the same year that movie comes out? Or is it going to be set in the present day like The Wolverine was and kind of pick up from that point? If Daniel Cudmore was involved, you would have to assume it was set in present day because Daniel Cudmore could not believably be the same age in 1980s that he is in the present day. And stay with me, guys. I know this is getting a little complicated, but that's just kind of how the movies have been set up. So by Daniel Cudmore coming out and saying he's not in the movie, that could mean that the film actually is set in the past and they have to recast him in the Deadpool movie, or it could just mean that Fox brass decided that Daniel Cudmore is really more of a bodybuilder, which is true, really more of a bodybuilder and a stuntman than he is an actor, and they had a much larger role in mind for Colossus and Deadpool and want to get somebody who could believably act everything out. On the one hand, that really sucks for Daniel Cudmore because he's done it for 3 movies now, and it's kind of a slap in the face to say, hey, we don't need you this time, thanks. But on the other hand, it may be a sign of a really interesting character story arc for Colossus. But Colossus is not typically a character who's associated with Deadpool. I'm not saying they've never been on panel together. They have. But it just seems like you'd think that you'd go with a character like Cable or Wolverine or somebody who's more in Deadpool's camp than a guy like Colossus. So
they're also seeming to go much younger on the casting in X-Men Apocalypse. So
true, and that's another telling thing. Once we find out who's been cast as Colossus, if they have a guy in his 20s playing Colossus, it's probably safe to assume that Deadpool is going to take place in the same time period as X-Men Apocalypse, and that they've chosen to cast the role down. So all that's going to come down to is who they end up picking for Daniel, to replace Daniel Cumber. But it's safe to say he's not returning, and it is a bit unfortunate because he has played Colossus so many times now. But that's just, some interesting news on the Deadpool front when we really don't know a whole lot about that movie. And moving on to the next casting announcement, we have Gina Carano playing Angel Dust. Now, Gina Carano, I believe, is former MMA, mixed martial arts, and she actually was in the film Haywire, and I didn't see that movie, but I understand that, it's a very physical film, and she was basically a character who was able to take out anybody that she came up on. It was very much hand-to-hand combat, throws, things like that. And she was in Fast and the Furious 6. But she hasn't really done a whole lot of acting. In fact, in Fast and the Furious 6, I believe all of her lines were dubbed over. Or I may have that backwards. Maybe they were all dubbed over in Haywire every time she talked. But so she's a character who seems to have been casted for her physicality over her acting ability, which probably gives us an idea that this is somebody that either Deadpool is going to have to partner up with or fight with. Not somebody who's there for dramatic effect, but there for the action scenes.
Do you know if it's going to be villain, hero?
We don't, but the fact that she plays a Morlock and her ability is to adjust her adrenaline levels, giving her temporary strength, would seem to suggest that whatever it is, it's going to be offensive. So we could potentially look at her fighting Deadpool. And I'm sure in a Deadpool movie you can imagine if he has to square off against a female, he's probably going to enjoy it more than he should while he's in the middle of the fight. So there could be a lot of humor at play here as well. Now, interesting about Angel Dust is that she is a character who was created by Jeff Johns, a man who, since creating that character, has become much more associated with DC Comics. So I wonder if there's any rights issues there, or if it was intentional that they chose a character that Jeff Johns is known for creating. I just find that an interesting point. And Angel Dust is another character, too, who's invented for a specific comic book series called Morlocks and hasn't really appeared outside of that book. So it's also telling that...
They're digging deep.
They're digging deep, yes. They don't have to dig deep, which is interesting. And they're digging deep for a character that maybe they can make completely their own and change everything about. I don't know. Yep. So, do you have any expectations or thoughts about Angel Dust based on what you know?
I know nothing about Angel Dust. Aren't the Morlocks kind of sometimes friend, sometimes foe? So, really, maybe this character isn't... It's going to be more of a rogue for Deadpool.
Yeah, I would say so, yeah.
So, yeah, we'll see her sometimes, but not a primary character. I don't know, we'll see.
We'll see. So, moving onward, then we're going to go ahead and go over to DC. DC actually released an official photo of Jason Momoa as Aquaman, and I'm going to put that up on the screen right now. I honestly am really impressed with this image. Oh, yeah. I really am not a fan of the desaturation of images for Batman vs. Superman. I wish they would stop doing that. I want to see everything. I don't want to see a mostly black and white, but that aside, I really like the design of this Aquaman. I think it looks, and let you know how big of a nerd I am, I think it looks more like Ronan Deck's Aquaman than it does Khal Drago.
Okay. Yeah.
But because he's got like the long hair, he's got the full beard. He doesn't have that mascara around his eyes for one thing. But I just see like the next evolution of a Ronan Dex type character, and I like that they've taken the real tattoo that Jason Momoa has, that Samoan tattoo or the Islander tattoo that he's got on his forearm, and they've incorporated it all over his body. I don't think he's gotten that tattoo over his whole body. I mean, that would have been a ton of makeup work on Game of Thrones if that were the case. But that's that sort of triangle pattern. You can look at the image and see that. But they've almost used it as a way to kind of replace the idea of chainmail on Aquaman, which I thought was really cool. Mm-hmm. It's also worth noting that this Aquaman photo, he's got, I think, an armor piece on his right shoulder, which is consistent with how Aquaman was drawn in the 1990s. Okay. So he's got the long hair, he's got the armor on the shoulder, he's shirtless. He's just missing the hook hand, and we've got 90s Aquaman. So I think that's kind of an interesting sort of design choice for the character. But what are your thoughts on the image that was released?
It's both... it calls back to the Aquaman that I know. I'm not a huge Aquaman reader, but I know the appearance, so seeing it right away, I was like, oh yeah, Aquaman. But at the same time, it's its own thing. Like when I first heard that they had released the photo of him as Aquaman, looked it up, found a whole bunch of different takes on it. Some that were very traditional, like Jason Momoa head photoshopped onto Injustice Aquaman.
Oh, okay.
Stuff like that. But I mean, I knew right when I saw it, I was like, oh, that's the real one. That's that's pretty legit. So yeah, I was pleased.
Also interesting is the text that was on this image. The phrase said, "Unite the Seven." Now, I originally thought, oh, Unite the Seven. Of course, he's Aquaman. It's the Seven Seas. That's what they're shooting for. But also, that could mean that there's 7 members of the Justice League. Yeah. So when they finally get to the Justice League, Unite the Seven, maybe he has something to do with pulling together all these different heroes?
Have they? Okay, so we know we're going to have Superman, Batman, Aquaman. Have we had any announcement on, say, Green Arrow?
No Green Arrow announcement. We know Wonder Woman's coming.
Wonder Woman?
We know Flash has been cast.
Flash.
We know Cyborg has been cast.
Well, that's 7 if we include Green Arrow.
True. I guess I'm trying to think. There might be another one out there that we're not thinking of. But yeah, it seems like they're going to have a Justice League of 7 members.
Huh. And as far as I know, the oh gosh, what's his name? The Snyder continuity has nothing to do with like CW, DC.
No, sadly.
Yeah. So if we do see Green Arrow, it'll probably be their own take on it.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's that poster there. Pretty interesting stuff. I'm sure we'll keep getting images because that movie is still. That's not even going to come out this year. We just started this year, and it's still going to be next year
Seems
before
like
Batman
we've been talking
Superman.
about that for years.
Yes.
I mean, we have.
We have, yeah. So I think it's March of next year that movie finally comes out. So we'll have to keep an eye out for any more reveals.
Now.
Right? Yeah. Until they push it back again. So the next bit of casting news is Doug Jones has been cast as Jake Simmons or Deathbolt in Arrow. Now, Doug Jones is a character I mostly know him from his non-speaking work, I guess, in Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer when he played the Silver Surfer. He also was Abe Sapien. He wore the Abe Sapien costume in Hellboy 1 and Hellboy 2. But both times, they didn't use his voice. When he was Silver Surfer, Lawrence Fishburne voiced him. When he was Abe Sapien, he was voiced by David Hyde Pierce. So I don't know if that means that we're going to hear his voice finally in this Arrow project. But Deathbolt is a character who first appeared in All-Star Squadron in 1983, issue number 21. And he's a character who has electronic or electric abilities, as his name would suggest, and he just kind of shoots electric projectiles. He is a character who was created by Roy Thomas. Interesting how we had Angel Dust created by Jeff Johns showing up in Marvel. Now we've got a very Marvel-based creator, Roy Thomas, from like the old Marvel Guard, having created this character for DC, and they're using this character in Arrow. Go ahead.
The character, just his how he works, reminds me more of a Marvel character than a DC
yes,
character. You know,
I would agree.
To channel electricity, it's like Electro in DC universe.
Exactly, right, yeah. And this character also doesn't have a lot in the way of backstory. He really hasn't appeared that much since being created, so he's also another character, much like Angel Dust is for the Deadpool movie, that they could decide on the CW to really do whatever they want with and not worry about, angering a bunch of fans because they've completely jumped the shark on his origin or anything. So it'll be interesting to see, though, a superpowered character on Flash. I know we haven't really on Arrow, excuse me. We haven't really seen a lot of superpowered villains on Arrow.
This will actually be the first metahuman.
The first metahuman on Arrow,
not including Flash.
Assuming we don't get one by the end of the season, right? This year.
This is true.
Yeah.
And we'll get to that, but yeah.
So, all right then. So moving on then. We had Dean Cain and Helen Slater cast in the CBS Supergirl pilot. So Dean Cain, of course, is Superman from the Adventures of Lois and Clark, and Helen Slater played Supergirl in the movie of the same name in the 1980s. These actors are roughly the same age, and they've been cast in the Supergirl pilot in unspecified roles.
Her parents.
That's what I thought too, her parents. So the initial thought I had was that maybe it was going to be Jor-El, Superman's dad, and then Superman's mother, but I believe Superman's mother is already appearing in the project, played by somebody else. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see if these are actually Kara Zor-El's parents or where they go with that, but it seems highly likely that that's kind of the angle that they're trying to pull. So it's really cool. DC, because it's been around so much longer and been in media so much longer than Marvel has, at least successful media, that they have a history of going back and using previous actors from different projects. I mean, Smallville really became, by the end of that show, a who's who of what DC actor is going to show up in a new role.
And on the show Flash, the Flash's dad is played by the Flash from the 90s show.
Exactly, right? So this is just kind of another cool nod, and I'm glad to see that Burt Laney Productions is kind of keeping that going. So moving on from that, we have a Superman body double being cast in the Supergirl pilot. Now, the way that the casting announcement went out was it was asking for somebody who should be 5'11" or taller, be square-jawed, and have a ripped physique. And the subject line on this casting announcement was Superman. Now, I don't know if that means Superman's going to be in the pilot. It's interesting that they're looking for a body double for Superman and maybe not necessarily looking for a Superman. So I don't know if that means that Superman's going to exist in the Supergirl universe. If that's the case, we sure as heck better see him on Flash and Arrow, because why not? Or if it's going to be some sort of dream sequence. We really don't know what's going to be going on with that, but since they're not, as far as we know right now, they're looking for a body double, not an actor. So it's potential that we just have a hazy scene where a Superman-like figure speaks to Kara or something along those lines, and then we just never see Superman again. I don't know how they're going to choose to handle that. Do you think you'd like to see Superman on the Supergirl pilot?
You know, I just don't know enough about Supergirl, her story, what happens in that universe, to really have an opinion on that.
My knowledge of Supergirl comes from mostly Smallville. I didn't really read any DC comics with her in it, but in that series, she was actually launched after Clark was sent off from the planet. She was launched as an adult-type figure, even though she was only, teenage in Kryptonian years. Somebody to follow baby Kal-El, and when he crashes on Earth and he's an infant, she's there to take care of him and raise him. But she ends up getting, I think, at least in the Smallville continuity, and I may be mixing this up now with something else, but the point is she doesn't find him right away. She gets stuck, and she's not found until Clark's actually older than she is. And then instead of her teaching him how to handle being on Earth and learning to use his powers, which nobody knew he was going to have, he actually says, hey, welcome to Earth. You've got these great abilities. Let me teach you how to use them. And it kind of came this whole thing of she was like, oh, you were my little cousin, but now I'm your little cousin. So it's an interesting sort of character dichotomy there. It'd be nice if we saw that same sort of thing on Supergirl, but Arrow and Flash haven't really established Superman as a fixture of their universe.
Never been mentioned.
Yeah, so I don't know that same sort of relationship would work on this show if that's what they're choosing to do.
Yeah.
So, all right, and moving on then, let's go ahead and talk about This Week in Geek TV. We got the finale of Agent Carter.
Yes, we did.
So I should first say that we've been off for a couple of weeks. We haven't talked about the penultimate episode or the final episode of this series. In the penultimate episode of this show, we had Peggy Carter locked down in SHIELD custody, or SSR custody.
Yeah.
They thought they had found their man. Sousa had done his due diligence, so he thought, and they captured the person who had been teaming up with Tony, the person who was at the party early on in the season, the person who had basically been helping Stark to steal and sell weapons, the whole bit. They had all the evidence they needed, just wasn't very strong evidence. And while Peggy was being interrogated, Dottie was across the street, still talking to the Russian scientist they'd recovered, and they were giving each other updates basically on what was going on. And the crew in the second to last episode of SSR, they hadn't figured out yet that they had a mole in their midst. So while Peggy's being interrogated, stuff's going down at SSR. They're after the inventions of Howard Stark, and basically the episode ended as Chief Dooley let the Russian scientist go at the same time he was forced to kill himself because he had a bomb vest on, basically.
Yep.
It was a very, very sad episode. It showed us a lot more of how influential that Russian scientist is, and forgive me for forgetting his name, but we really got a lot of backstory for him too. So it was a very sort of touching, moving episode, and it set up a lot of stuff that went down in the final episode when Tony Stark shows up and
Howard Stark.
Howard Stark shows up and basically turns himself in because everything has gotten so bad at this point. Peggy's been arrested. Jarvis made a failed attempt to save Peggy. Howard shows up and says, here I am, let's talk this out. And we basically get the showdown with Dottie and Agent Carter we were always looking for. The Russian scientist, he gets captured.
Yep.
And an interesting note. Yeah, I was going to say an interesting note follows up from that. But he also tries to have Tony release his gas, his crazy gas. I forget what they called it in the show, if they even named it.
I don't remember.
But he was going to fly it over Times Square and release it and have basically New York attacking each other and really set himself up to be this big villain character that the evil forces could then use to say,
he convinced him that he was going to save Steve, though. That
he did, yes.
He hypnotized him into thinking he had found Steve and was going to go.
Yep, yeah. And that's what he thought he was doing, is flying to the location of Steve, when in actuality, he was going to go basically poison gas New York. So a lot of stuff went down. I've probably missed a few things, but feel free to fill me in here. But overall, I think it was a fantastic finale.
Well, okay, so just to get to where, so you've got Dottie and the doctor, and they're in some warehouse, or was like a hangar or something.
Yeah.
And then Peggy, Sousa, and...
Oh, they were in Stark's warehouse, actually, his second vault.
There you go,
yeah.
Peggy, Sousa, and Thompson show up, and... see, Sousa and Thompson, I can't remember, they go to do something, but then Peggy is dealing with Dottie. She fights Dottie, knocks her out of a window,
yeah.
And she lands on the ground in the hangar. Blood pool, seems like she's dead. And then the doctor had gotten away, but then he is trying to hypnotize Sousa, who's walking up and is like, I'm not going to listen to you. And then it seems like he's succeeding, and Sousa's about to shoot Thompson, but then Sousa just hits him in the face. pulls out earplugs like,
Yep.
was he
a
saying
great
something?
moment. Yeah, that was a great moment.
But then we find out that Dottie is gone. They find, well, and actually before that, Peggy convinces Howard that she doesn't beat his hypnosis, but she essentially convinces him that it's okay what happened to Steve.
Yes.
That he can get over it, that he can come back. And suddenly Howard wakes up and is like, what am I doing in this airplane?
Yeah.
And then we get back to the hangar and Dottie's gone. They take the doctor into custody. And shortly thereafter, Jarvis gives Peggy Steve's blood, which he had taken from Howard when he was hypnotized. Says, I'm sure the only person who knows what to do with this is you. And I think the last thing we see after that, Peggy standing on the bridge, opens up the blood, pours it into the river. Series end.
Well, actually, the last thing we saw... well, before we even get to that, the last thing we saw was actually Jack Thompson taking credit for saving the day.
That's true, yes.
As the senator, was it, who came in? Or some spokesperson for the White House came in. So Jack Thompson basically showing that sexism's still alive and well at SSR, even though everything went down the way that it did. Another interesting thing I want to mention is that IGN had an interview with, I want to say, the writers for the final episode of Agent Carter, and they said that originally that scene where Howard is flying the plane and Jarvis is following him wasn't supposed to happen that way. Jarvis was the one who was supposed to be on the microphone echoing a scene from Captain America when Peggy was doing the same thing with Cap. Mm-hmm. Jarvis was going to be talking to Tony through the microphone, and what they wanted to do was sort of visually recreate the idea of Howard being in a cockpit with a Jarvis voice talking to him while he was flying.
Ah, nice.
Yeah, to kind of give a nod to the future with Tony. But in the plane pursuing Tony, or Howard, was supposed to be Neil McDonough as Dum Dum Dugan. But he was committed, scheduling-wise, to another series at the time, and they couldn't do that.
And they couldn't very well have Peggy flying after him.
Exactly, right? So, so they kind of had to rewrite the scene with Jarvis following after Howard, which I still think was really nice, because it seems like it would be up to Jarvis to finally take his boss out, as it were, after everything that had gone down. He was very reserved about it, but I think it played out very, very well.
Well, it's interesting that you were saying they were going for a Cap homage when what they ended up getting was almost a Cap ripoff.
Yeah,
Peggy
right?
sitting there talking right in the mic, and I was like, this feels just like the end of Captain
Doesn't
America.
It? Yeah, especially after they had that lead up with the frozen wasteland, and so... it's interesting how it played out. I mean, I think it would have been cool to see it the other way with Jarvis talking to Howard, but I like the way that it sort of ended. And I've got to say, when it came to that Stark blood, we saw when Peggy first finds Captain America blood. When Peggy first finds Captain America's blood a few episodes back, and even in this last episode, when she gets it from Jarvis, the raw emotion that Haley Atwell is able to produce every time that blood comes into play and she remembers Captain America, you fully believe that this woman is in love with Captain America and lost the best thing that ever happened to her.
It's the only thing she has left.
It really is. I mean, it is really, I would say it's a tear-jerking scene. When she gets the blood and pours it out over the bridge, it's just blood, but she really seems like she's actually saying goodbye to Cap again. I mean, I think that was one of the most brilliantly acted scenes, and I've got to give her props. I think Haley Atwell is a very good actress. Hope she gets other work outside of this, but if she keeps coming back to Marvel, I'm not going to mind. But that was certainly something that caught me off guard both times that she saw Captain America's blood, was just the raw emotion of, this is the man I love more than life itself, and I've got to protect him. I've got to take care of this. So I really appreciated that. That said, let's go ahead and get to the final scene of the episode. We see the Russian doctor locked up in a jail cell. His mouth has been wired shut so he can't talk or hypnotize people. And a German voice is speaking to him from out of a shadow, basically saying, your skills are something that we'd like to experiment with.
How does he end up getting locked up with Arnim Zola?
My thought on that is that Hydra has infiltrated the American government.
So they intentionally put them together?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, especially in that time frame, jail isn't really jail. It's just Hydra boardroom time.
That's so certainly with, oh gosh, what was his name on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? Whitehall?
Oh, yes, Whitehall, you're right. Yep, he was
pretty much in the same situation.
In prison as a formality. I think it was the same sort of idea. Like, they knew he was captured, and they put him with somebody, or maybe even Zola worked it out to where he was in the cell with the guy. I think they had that big of a control over what was going on in the back end of things. So, but it was really, really cool to see Zola talk about mind control and how Hydra would like to adapt that, Winter Soldier anybody, and that they have great projects they like to do together, and even starts the Russian doctor on writing out what they can do. So, that was an amazing way to close out the episode and close out the series, honestly. I think this was a great finale. I I think as a whole, I'm really, really happy with what Agent Carter had accomplished as a series. I think even with its shorter episode run, it actually helped the series, I think, to not have any real weak link episodes.
There was no downtime, which is
so,
good.
yeah, the series just kept moving forward at a good pace. I really, really like what they did here. I know there's been some talk about getting a season 2 of Agent Carter. I'm not sure I want a season 2.
What I would say is, like, I think that they did a very good job with the miniseries approach. What I wouldn't want to see is them get, a 3-season deal. Or
Yes.
something. At the very least, if we do see more of this, I'd like to see it in the same format where it's like, hey, here's a
mid-season filler for
S.H.I.E.L.D.
S.H.I.E.L.D.
Here's a new 8-episode Peggy Carter event.
Yes.
Something like that.
I would agree, because I feel like with Peggy Carter over, it's almost like an extended edition of Captain America 1.5. I mean, you get that thing on Blu-ray, you watch it if you can in a weekend, and you basically watch one really long continuous story, and I think it really, really works well as the type package that it's in, and I just, if they do this again next year, which I totally think they should do this format next year with a miniseries in the middle of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., so we don't have to deal with no new episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or repeats for, several weeks at a time. I think that they should maybe not consider doing Peggy Carter, because I really feel like this movie did a lot to service her character. I feel like if we don't get any more out of this, the series ends with Peggy Carter being exactly where she needs to be for when we see her again in Captain America, the Winter Soldier. Also, I feel like it sets things up enough that with Arnim Zola talking to the Russian doctor, he's exactly where he needs to be for both Bucky to happen, the Winter Soldier to happen, and for him to potentially end up as the computerized backup that he was in Captain America: The Winter Soldier.
It did somewhat screw up Peggy's one-shot, though.
It totally did, yeah.
Well, I would say it partially did. The most inconsistent things are the fact that you've got Thompson and Sousa still there.
Yes.
But at least with, like you said earlier, the way it ended, we see that the sexism is still alive and well.
It is.
And that Peggy, it seemed like at the end she was going to stay with SSR, and will probably continue to be in a role where she's mostly overlooked.
Well, and the thing is, but as she came into that room at the end of the finale, everyone applauded her and what she did. They weren't applauding Thompson yet. They were applauding her and her efforts. It seemed like she had finally gained acceptance. And if we're to believe that that's the same office that she's working in when the...
It's tough to believe.
It's tough to believe, yeah. Unless everybody's been changed out and Peggy's the only one still there, it's tough to believe that she would be ignored as badly as she was in that one shot.
Yeah.
So I was really hoping when the series ended, prior to seeing the final episode, that it would end with sort of the beginning of that one shot. In retrospect, I'm glad it didn't, because I really like the way the episode ended, but it also seems like the one shot maybe didn't really count for anything at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So, any final thoughts on the episode?
I think that's a pretty good summary.
All right, so we are getting Agents of